pleasure to have you on board. We're going to be talking about AI, NFTs, traditional art, digital art, and why are we comparing all these things and what's frightening us and what's not. And I hope that everybody will enjoy the show, the discussion. We're going to record this session because it is being streamed live on YouTube, and we will be also having it on YouTube and our various social media. The links for those who want to listen to it again or who may have missed it, or those who want to share it, we'd be most grateful. The artists that are joining us are Amanda and Taline, and both of them are on their wise.art platform, and their art is available. So don't rush off just yet, but wait till the end of the webinar. But then, please do go ahead, pull out your wallets, connect your Ethereum, Casper, or Polygon, or pull out your credit cards, and let's go and start collecting NFTs. So in the meantime, a lot of people have been talking about the banking world and the Credit Suisse. We're based in Switzerland, so even though we've got Christopher coming from England and Amanda in the States, Credit Suisse has been a worry. But not for the NFT world and not for the crypto world. It's actually come in as a refuge currency. So here we go. It's time to start investing. We can ask questions. The audience, please do feel free. This is an important one.
The name is.
I know Taline's just joined us, but
yes.
I'll just give you some admin. So let's see the Q&A questions down there. At the bottom of your screen, and the audience, you can feel free to interrupt and ask us questions anytime, and all of our speakers will be more than happy to answer. So hi Taline, how are you?
I'm okay. I think the name is wrong on the okay here, because I can see Christopher both on both.
That's okay, it's all right. We'll keep going now. We're live and you've got an audience, Taline, so we'll keep going. So this is Taline Temisian. She's one of our artists based in London, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Already an experienced artist with galleries representing Taline in Germany and all over the world. I met Taline at TEFAF in Maastricht a few years ago. So I've witnessed some of her art and I've witnessed some of her performances. So we're very happy to have you on board, Taline.
Thank you.
And then we have Christopher. Christopher is an AI engineer. He's graduated from the University of Sussex and is joining us today. And he can help us out with all the technicalities, I guess, because being creative women here, I don't think we'll have all the answers. So welcome, Christopher.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, by any means, is Amanda. Amanda's joining us from the States. And it's her lunch break, so hopefully your tummy won't gargle too much. Self-taught artist, you've been on the platform for a while, and we thank you for your trust. It's really nice. I love all the heads that you've done and the various fundraisers that you've participated in. So again, thank you so much for your support. And looking forward to starting this webinar. The question is, what's the buzz? Because as we were saying before we started, Taline, you missed our little intro at the beginning, but we were saying that everything is going so fast in this technical world, and that, one day you sort of find out about Lensa and you get your filters going and you create your avatars and whatever. The next day, AI is kicking in with GPT chat, and it was GPT chat 2, then it was 3, and now it's 4. And this is, over an expanse of not even 1 month. And so for those who don't know what GPT chat is, it used to be, and now it's evolved already, but it's actually a content creator, which is generated by AI going all over the internet to find out the information at the speed of light. So you could possibly, and I've actually witnessed it one day with our CEO, Carlos Moreira, who just typed on his phone, "Love poem wife," and within 30 seconds he had like 100 words spit out. Mind you, he shared it with his wife, who immediately knew it wasn't him writing, but that's another story. So yeah, these things happen, and GPT-4 is now creating videos as well, so adding audio, which the next thing will be creating films without any actors or without any producers or any directors. What do you think, Christopher? Because you're also still in the student life, or actually just out of it. Is this a good way to cheat?
So ChatGPT is probably the best example of how AI is currently evolving. And as you said, it's happened quite rapidly. Like GPT for the public only came out in November of last year, and already in April, it's everywhere. People are using it all the time. And a couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT 4 came out, which obviously allows videos and stuff like that. And it's kind of now like an arms race for AI is how I describe it, where all these companies are now rushing to try and get their AI out. Like ChatGPT is owned by Microsoft. You've got Google making theirs called Bard, and they're trying to get these AI tools basically out to try and corner their bit of the market without thinking too much of who it's impacting or how it can be used maybe maliciously or to take people's art, as we'll talk about today.
And that's what most people are saying as well, that the creativity will be shot. So coming from two artists like Amanda and Taline, Taline, what do you think? Because you're a hands-on person with lots of different medias. Is this frightening for you, or is this, on the other hand, quite exciting? On the contrary, yeah.
It's definitely not frightening, because unlike what we define, this is what I actually was talking to Chris yesterday, unlike what we define as we are computers or computers are the same, I'm a believer in the reverse kind of theory, where it's actually the consciousness and the mind, they are irreplaceable, no matter how much machines are programmed or how much we are programming them. Because Chris explained to me something very interesting also, which I want to actually touch on. This is so important. He called it the Chinese room, which basically what AI is doing, it's checking almost the image of the text as opposed to the meaning of the text. And the meaning, this is so kind of recurrent in all art forms, because without understanding and the consciousness, there is no art or so-called art, because it doesn't reach to the other's consciousness. So there is a barrier there.
Yeah, it's very true. It's superficial, would you say?
Superficial is an understatement. Yes, it's yes. So I think just not to go all over the place, I wanted to first define a few things. Chris, he wants to speak about, first of all, a lot of people are saying a lot of words, but we really don't know the meaning. What is cognitive science? Fundamentally, if we know cognitive science, then this will be much more clearer. What is AI? What is artificial neural networks? And how is it different to the brain, actually? But before I mention that, I will quote actually a neuroscientist who I admire a lot, Dr. Beatrice de Gelder. She's a professor in actually Amsterdam and the University of Maastricht, actually. So she defined something as saying the brain is not a hard drive. The brain is not a black box, because it is not a computer. The memory, the actual workings of the memory, which is my area, which I like to always talk about eventually. The whole purpose of my project is to actually explore memory and to work it, to actually improve it. Not improve memory, but improve its purposes and working. But memory, in fact, it's not some bytes measured the computer, and then it's like any artificial intelligence, how they connect it, how you give the strength, how you give power. It's not as simple, straightforward. So the brain is much more complex than that. So Chris, can you first clarify to the listeners these few points? Because it's from the outset, if you know that this is the terms you're talking about, then it's very easy to explain on that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's basically, you touched on three different things that I think need some definition there. So you've got this whole cognitive science, which is just it's the scientific study of what goes on in the mind and its processes to basically understand cognition. And this is looking at multiple areas of study, such as linguistics, psychology, neuroscience, and nowadays computer science and artificial intelligence. and its goal is to examine how we think, how we complete tasks in nature, and just how cognition functions. This leads into artificial intelligence, which we as humans would describe as when a machine operates a task in a way that signifies that the machine kind of understands it to a level that we as humans do, or something that maybe animals in the wild would do, because animals can be seen to have a level of intelligence. So tasks that happens most often in with AI would be speech recognition, computer vision, translation between languages, and the more common one today is machine learning, like with ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's experimenting as well, and as you said, it's we're feeding it, and it's still human beings feeding it behind it. And Amanda, you know that as well. You've been experimenting, and you're interested in the mental workings of a human being. But I know that you've been using AI a lot. So how do you approach it? Why do you use it?
Well, I personally think AI is absolutely amazing. I feel like I said earlier to you that it's launched just 100 years into the future. It's enabled so many new types of art forms that I don't feel like it's cheating with anything. I think it's like a tool. I always say AI and I feel like it's almost more collaborative. Like you can really get in there and you can have a partnership almost with the AI. I'm so excited. Like I want to understand the AI more. I ask it questions. I try to figure it out, because I feel like it goes much deeper than what people know about it right now. I think we're going to continue learning and we're going to continue growing with it and almost have a symbiotic type relationship. That's just my thoughts, but I use it for marketing, for my free shop. I run a free shop, charity shop, where everything is free. I use it to help write articles. It's just an amazing tool. I do AI art every day, and I'm using AI art in my digital drawings to help teach me shading, because I'm new to digital painting. I'm new to digital drawing. And so I can use the AI art to help me to learn about shapes and what's pleasing and colors and shadows and such. So I just love it. I think it's a fantastic tool, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, I like the idea of collaborative as well, because that's what, I mean, when we started using computers to translate our work, and the old one was Google Translate, you always had to reread it because it was never right. And as Taline was saying, the actual meaning is different to the image and the content of the words. You can use the same words and, with a comma or whatever, change the meaning. And that's where you have to be very careful. There is other tools now that are a little bit more precise, but it's true that you need to always verify. And whatever AI in art as well may spit out, you can always correct or improve in your eyes. Would you say that's correct, Taline? Is that it's something that's an ongoing work? What AI spits out is not your final art.
I personally I use codes in my work, but in the new projects we will be using more AI in terms of analyzing feedback from audience. But to me, I think collaborative is one word. It's a great word, kind of concept to use, but my inclination is more to use it to analyze, not to understand.
Okay.
It's more of a tool rather than an end, if you like. On that, Chris, you remember we had some diagrams there with the inputs and outputs and how it explains the architectural studies. Can you go through that? Do you have the map? Because I can actually try to share.
You can share.
I like to show. Something.
I don't know if you've got. I need to ask the host if you've got the sharing
no problem.
In the administration.
Okay. Okay. Maybe Chris, you can just explain to us the architectural model of how data comes in, how it gets analyzed, what happens in between the computing wise, and what's the difference, because in the brain is very different than in the computer, and then it comes out, and all the where you have the progress or you have the recurrence, the last diagram, say.
So a neural network is basically based on our brain, where you get something comes in. So for us, that would be our 5 senses, and that gets taken in as an input, and then you basically have this hidden layer within our brains where you have your neurons firing and whatnot, and then you get an output, whether that's speech or an action. That's how it works in the human body. And the most simple stage of AI is basically just trying to replicate what exists in biology. And this is what a neural net or an artificial neural network is. So what you have is you have an input, you have some hidden layers, and then you have an output. So one of the more common kind of neural network is called a recurrent neural network. And this is based on how we as humans learn something. So we learn something by adjusting the connectivity between neurons in our brains, depending on the flow of information. So this can be done biochemically, by changing the sensitivity of connections, or this can be done by structurally, by creating new connections between neurons. So the goal of a neural network is to basically replicate this and have this plasticity. So this is done through feedback loops, where when going through a path to get from when you want a certain output, you give it a certain input, you want a certain path to be done through these different nodes in the neural network. And when you end up getting a pattern of the nodes that are gone through. And what happens is when one node goes to another node, it gets a feedback loop, and you get this recurrent loop, basically, that strengthens that connection. And what you end up there is basically a form of memory, which you will then just get a pattern, which is essentially a memory of, okay, this neural network now knows that in order to get the correct output, after a lot of training, to get this correct output, it just needs to follow this said pattern by doing these feedback loops, which is exactly how our brains work.
And it will react, right, if the pattern is recurring and then all of a sudden there's a slight change. I'm thinking more like music composition now. Yeah. And I know Taline also works with music and perform operatic music.
Sound, yes.
Yeah, so it's rebounding, but then there's a slight change and the machine will learn and repeat again with the new input, if you like. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so when you're training it, you want a certain output, and you'll be giving it this input, and you'll keep going through the network until it gets the correct output. And as soon as it gets the correct output, it gets a bit of positive reinforcement, like, okay, that's the correct thing. And it'll building itself and changing the weightings, basically, which is how strong the connections are and how often it's going to go down that connection. So when you then switch the input, it's obviously then going to try going down different paths to try and get the correct output, and that will build the memory of, okay, if I get this input, I need to do this, and then but if I get another input, I need to do this. And the more you train it, the stronger those connections get, and it does develop a sort of memory.
Bit like my old math problems. If your tap leaks this much, it gets that. If your tap leaks that much, it gets this.
And in fact, that is actually the root of how AI can be used for working, let's say, systems and creating systems that will change our perception towards things and towards the world, and taking a different kind of path and pathway, constantly doing that, shifting. So then shifting the perspective, shifting everything. So this is how AI and art can be really collaborating with each other for the good of, let's say, our mental state, or scientifically speaking, and psychologically speaking. So this is the aim for me. This is why it's so exciting. Giving examples where with NFTs, for example, which you're mostly working with, and platforms, etc. Sorry, I need to turn this off. What happens is the films that we're working with for NFTs, the stills of the films. Somehow we actually gave it. In this case, it wasn't AI, but it was algorithms with certain formulas, which obviously AI is a lot connected to algorithms, but these algorithms particularly were put there with a description from open source kind of thing, and we received some film out of all the films that we inputted there. The result and the stills that we got out of those films, because we managed to extract the still, it's extraordinary. It's almost how my brain was working and wanting these images to come out. which is a very interesting experiment. So I worked this with my collaborator, Max Seeger, who I work with on certain projects. And we discovered that what he sent me was exactly what I would have wanted to transform. That means the AI or the algorithms that he worked with, they use this information in the existing material and created its own pathway, and it gave this results. Algorithm or eventually AI. Ultimately, I'm trying to explain just the concept for now, how we can use these things. So it's very, very interesting kind of area. But when it comes to health, science, etc., to me, this is like the ultimate next step to take. And that's what I'm working on this project with. In fact, we have a partner who's a Proximus Ada, which is a big communication company, which the AI branch, basically, they are working with this stuff. So this is the next kind of, this is like the first time I actually announced this. So yeah.
Ah, well, this is a premiere. Thank you very much, Taline. It's great.
You're welcome.
So I was going to ask Amanda, as in, you said you were introducing AI, being a self-taught artist and everything. Do you find that it's easy for you, for example, to say, I'd like to paint a sunset. I'm being very basic here, but a sunset in the mountain, and I want it to look like Van Gogh, and then you work on it? Or is that how you use it? Or how did you start? What are you doing with it?
I do kind of use it that way. I will just be in the car because I do it on my phone mostly. We have internet connection issues out in the country, so we have to travel a lot to use the internet. So I'll do it at the library or on my phone when I'm in the car and I've got my 5G, and I'll just input whatever's on my mind, and it could be anything at that second. And then I'll be pretty descriptive. I've learned that you've got to be really descriptive. You've got to work on your inputs. You got to talk about the lighting that you want. You've got to talk about the material you want. You've got to talk about whatever elements and whatever colors. At least that's how I approach it. I'm pretty specific to get an image that I like, and that is what is in my mind. And then once I have it, I tweak it and I edit it to get it to be as close to what I would have drawn if I had the capabilities, which I do not. But if I had those capabilities, that's the image that I would have tried to draw. And so for me, it's really fascinating. It allows me to do things I could never do in real physical life. I've built some amazing sculptures in AI that would cost thousands of dollars to try to put together in a real life space, but you can do it for free. So the accessibility is amazing to me. It's also great. I'm a huge disability warrior. I actually have autism myself. And so I am big on accessibility, and AI art is accessible to almost anybody. It's so amazing. Like, I believe everyone's an artist. Everyone has that in them, that capability and that desire to create. And it just might be different things that they're creating, or maybe they haven't found what they want to create yet. And so this just expands it to the whole world. Now, all of a sudden, everybody can create, even if they don't have the physical ability. Maybe they have a problem with their hands and they can't draw. Maybe they have bad arthritis. Now they can still make something beautiful. And for me, that's the goal, is to put beauty out into the world, to create something new, to show how you're feeling, to connect with others. So that's what art is for me. And AI is a great way to do that.
Yeah, it's very nice too that it's accessible to everyone, even though at the beginning of the conversation we were saying the fact that it got democratized also created a lot of worry. And where I find, I'm from the art world, or at least the traditional art world, with high-end art, etc. And when Apple came out with fairly good photographic functions, it scared me, because all of a sudden everybody on the internet was a photographer and they were posting their sunsets and their views of different cities. So I think Taline, you'll agree with me, is that there comes a time where, yes, it's accessible to everyone and it's super useful and it's free and it can help a lot of people. At the other end, there is those learned or whatever artists that have got a concept and a message to bring out, and that the tool is also an additional tool for them to express themselves in that way. And
yes, sorry, in a way it's less of a threat, more an advantage, because most of the time I think it's like everything. When you have the replicas, the real becomes more important, if you like. But I don't also see it that way, because I don't see anymore the way I used to see art in terms of experience. To me, it's now about experience. It's about generating feeling, generating synapses, generating. This is for me much more interesting. I'm sure a lot of people are also getting into that. That's why I think metaverse is becoming so much more, let's say, exciting, because in my view, then you have a shared experience, a bit more of a life, a mini life someplace, rather than a painting on a wall. Of course, everything has its own place, but when it comes to photography or things generated or deep fakes and all that kind of things, it's all something that we, as if we really have the artistry and the creative process behind it, as we said, consciousness, not the machine calculation numeric, but consciousness, then the beauty of using that technology is multiplied by endless times, because in fact, that is such a collaboration, but it's such a interesting collaboration, rather than you just having the machine do the thing, but your actual creative output as a human is not there. That means your experience is not there. Therefore, you're not giving the experience. And so if you're going to actually tap into and penetrate into the consciousness, and therefore into the mind, into the experience of, therefore, the memory, the result of all that of the audience, then it needs to come from that place. So this is why when you have a lot of robotic and let's say digital, but with a bit of lifeless, let's say, replications and just numerics, without the idea and the feeling behind it, then it fails to reach to that target. It crashes very soon. That's my understanding of it. But one thing I wanted to also say, there is an important point that Chris initially, he sent me his notes actually, and it's extraordinary how these things are studied now. We are every day we are behind, basically. That's very true. You know, it's insane. So it's very weird, because you look at it, you think in our times when we started to study this, it was completely different perspective. So it's not even, the way of thinking is different now. So the way of logicking towards creative process is very different. So we talked about connectiveness and what is connectivity and what are networks, because ultimately we are all connected and everything is connected, and brain is a network. So I wanted to touch on that in terms of why AI, why digital art, is it even relevant, and all that kind of questions you ask for the beginning of the talk as a subject matter. So this is so important, because many years ago we were given a brief at London College of Communication that was called networks. The brief was one word, so you had to really be a kind of some sort of god or genius to imagine where this is going. Nobody understood what networks were. We understood that networks could have been, say, social networks. You know, at the time, even Facebook was still not so old, etc. So what I imagined is fashion networks. I thought, okay, because I was familiar with the fashion world a little bit, maybe I should talk about that. Then networks, and then somehow I stumbled into Roland Barthes, the fashion system. Looking at that book, you open it, it's all maths and mathematics with formulas. And Roland Barthes in the 50s and the 60s was talking about this, which goes to cybernetics suddenly. So as a philosopher, his work and cybernetics eventually goes to AI, part of the cognitive science studies.
Absolutely.
And somehow the project Networks and Systems started to become the self-producing digital artworks with the softwares I was working. There was no AI at the time. For me, of course, AI existed a long time ago, but I wasn't aware of it. And I didn't really use code per se at the time yet, coding. But what the software was doing, which is based on codes, was constantly coming with this endless possibilities. And suddenly the probability law, the law of chaos somehow comes in, and you have the beginnings of how AI can make art in that way without having AI. So the project became so suddenly advanced, and these things became almost involuntarily. So I was working on this, and it was such a weird pleasure of exchanging with the computer all that. And thanks to people like Roland Barthes, eventually, of course, you have people like Le Borg who work with visual grammar, and all this somehow come to life, and you realize that these people ultimately, it's like those who wrote the code by hand first, and you think this is the origins of that. So networks and systems, therefore connectiveness and connectivity is such an important point, which
Absolutely.
I want Chris to give a little bit of thing, because everything is about networks now, in fact. So Chris, please, if it's okay to quickly touch on that, and the PDP and all that. So
yeah, so we'll just, obviously, I'd mentioned before about neural networks, and that's basically like one side of AI where people can argue that AIs don't really understand or learn what you give them. Taline mentioned the Chinese room thing, which is done by a guy called Searle, which basically said you have this room, you think it's a machine from the outside, you write down some Chinese characters on a page, put the page into the room, the piece of paper that comes out will have it all translated to English. From the outside, you think, oh, this room understands Chinese and can translate it to English. But on the inside, there's a guy who sat there, he takes the piece of paper that comes in, looks up in a book what these Chinese symbols are, and then writes them down what they are in English, and then posts it back out of the room. And in that circumstance, to the outside, you're like, oh yeah, this machine, it understands Chinese, when really, no, it's just recognizing patterns on the inside. So that's basically an argument for
that's a very clear explanation. It's very visual.
Just it's an argument for basically this traditional view of AI, where it's just a symbolic system just recognizing symbols. But then on the other side of that, you've got this connectionist approach, which is part of cognitive science, and it uses artificial neural networks to explain the mental phenomena of cognition and AI. So this connectionist approach, it's performed basically when computing functions from a single set occur from a single set of patterns together until you get a certain output, like how a neural network works.
It's like this funneling again.
Literally. So there's one important thing about neural networks and this connectionist approach is there's always less outputs than inputs. And so if you think of a diagram of basically lots of circles representing nodes, you'll have three say inputs connected to about 5 in this nodes in this hidden layer where all the computation takes place, and then you'll only get out 2 as an output where you had 3 as an input. So it's always this kind of in this connectionist approach, you will need more inputs to get an output. And I think this touches on what Amanda said as well, where you have to be really descriptive with AI art in order to get the output you want, because it doesn't, if I said, oh, give me a picture of a nice sunset, it doesn't understand what nice means. It needs to know, oh, I want some like that golden hour kind of glow, that orangey glow across the landscape. I want it to be really low in the sky. It doesn't understand that when we say nice, that's what it's talking about.
That's very interesting. Maybe instead of like a lot of teachers are scared that people are going to lose are going to forget how to write properly. I think on the contrary, it'll stimulate their imagination to have to be more precise. So maybe it's going to work the other way around. I'm just going to ask the audience if they have any questions. We haven't got any so far, but it's been fascinating. Thank you guys for the presentations. It's making it much more easy to understand. But if we have any questions, guys, please don't forget, you can write them down in the Q&A, and then I will relay them as well. Now, I have a lot of people here are asking, when I speak to them about NFTs and the digital and how great I also think AI is not at all menacing, but it's not threatening to me at all. But people always say, oh yeah, but at the end of the day, I prefer to have my painting on my wall and I prefer to touch it. And then, if one day all the internet fails and we're in pitch black darkness, there's no more electricity, I'll still have my painting. And to which I usually say, well, if all internet disappears and then we have no more electricity, we'll have other things to worry about than our NFTs. But besides that, what do you reply to that? Maybe Amanda, and then I'll ask the other people.
Okay. Well, I am a physical, digital, and AI artist, so I understand the need to have the physical there. I also like to have physical. That's my physical painting of my dog on the wall, Charming. He passed away a few years ago. So I can get that. But for me, the ability that AI allows me to create things I couldn't create physically, which stimulates my brain and lets new ideas flow, it's just such a great thing that I don't mind that I have a mixture of some physical and some digital. I'd say that's a really ideal way to go about it, is to have a variety. Because when you have the digital, you can look on your phone at your things. You can make slideshows. We put them up on our barn. I'm actually going to get Headstown created onto 35mm slides, so that I can put it in my projector and put it on my barn. And it's so cool. So you can still have your digital as physical. You just have to be creative.
What about you, Taline? Have you got people saying, "Oh no, but I'd much rather buy your physical work"?
It's really to me, it's they're very two distinct things somehow. They're all extension of an idea. But yes, the traditional art world and art collectors, they always want a painting. Those who collect sculpture want a sculpture. But that also, to me, that's the material, let's say the tangible world, which is the old world in that sense. There's a lot more to be gained from experience, especially because it all depends on the purpose. So to me, an artwork on a wall or in my studio or with something my studio is full of artworks, and but this is something not necessarily enough to me. So in order for me, my aim is to do a little breakthrough, let's say, in the history of trauma and help humanity. This is my kind of quest. So this is something very different to what I was doing years ago. So it doesn't actually go outward. It doesn't necessarily only express or say, "Oh, listen to me, I feel this way," or "I want to express this and that and the other." It's no longer about that. The artist, it takes a step back, and the artist is an actual little experimentation scientist with the help of real scientists. Of course, we don't want to do pseudoscience here, but we make sure that the scientist and the artist become one, and they start exploring completely something. Yes, exactly, because it's all about the ways of thinking. The methodic thinking versus the chaotic, or the linear thinking versus the creative, or etc. So this is what interests me more, because also it's connected, like we said, it's all connected, everything in a way in the universe. That's my philosophy, my modest philosophy. But when it comes to cybernetics and generating ecosystems and experimenting things which would have never, and matching times, quantum times, and all that, it's to me much more of the actual expression of it's between you and the universe. So this is where the artwork experience exists. Yeah,
exactly. That's what you need to develop.
Yes.
And to before we go on to Christopher, I want to ask you about robotics, but we have a question. So the question comes from Dina Miller. Thanks for joining us, Dina. One of them was there's two questions actually. The first one is AI taking away blue chip white collar jobs. We are going to have to find people alternative work and some increase in welfare payments to help prop people up. How will this be done, and how will it be paid for? I tax the rich or robots and help find alternative work. So I might go to the next question before we answer that one.
I have a small diversion answer for that. I think you should ask the ministers and the governmental people. This is not my job. Sorry, the wrong. Sorry.
Keep creating, Taline. But no. Dina, there's blue and white collar jobs. I'll quickly go through my opinion, and probably Christopher will support me on that. Is that new jobs are being created as well? So it's just a matter of changing your your outlook and your studies. I mean, younger people today, I know that for a fact, because I'm getting it through WhatsApp, there is job offers all the time and every day for people in the technology sector. So I think it's going to balance out. But Christopher will help us. But I'll just read the next one. It's still from Dina. She's very interested in the hand-eye brain working together for disability artists. Helps with decision-making on all levels. That's what you were saying, Amanda. Can a program be written or suggested like that? Does anybody have any suggestions about a special program for that? And
Right.
would filming artists creating, drawing, sculpting, painting ultimately help AI develop? So the other way around, which is what we were saying, not so much AI developing us, but it's a fact that AI is feeding off of us. So obviously it's the human first. But what do you say, Christopher, about the job market? Do you think I'm right? Like there's more and more?
So it's that's a very hot issue at the minute. So it's not a simple answer of it will take our jobs or there will be other jobs. It's a mixed bag. I think there's going to be a transition period. So right now we have ChatGPT being able to program on a junior level. So you can ask ChatGPT, hey, code me a game of Pong, and it can do that. And that's what's at a junior level. What most programmers do, like myself, is fix bugs in software. And instead of employing someone, they can now just have one person repeatedly asking ChatGPT, hey, code this, or similar programs, hey, can you just fix this bug where I've done it wrong? But at the end of the day, they're the people that are asking the AIs to do these things that are higher up people. And these higher up people have 20, maybe 30 years on me. But what happens when, say, in 10 years' time, when they want to retire, someone's got to replace them. So if you're not bringing in people at the lower level to give them skills, then as soon as those people want to go and retire, you've then got a massive hole in your workforce that AI is not going to be able to fill. And I think AI in general is best when it is just a tool. So right now, with as I said earlier, we're seeing an arms race in AI bots that can help you do things, and that stems into the robotic side of things as well. And everyone right now is going, oh, what can we do? What can we do with this? And they're finding all the different use cases. But I feel what's going to happen is they'll realize that, yes, AI can do these things, but is it better than what a human can do? Is it worth giving up our creativity, our skills as humankind to these machines to make, just so some of us can sit back and basically pay less and do nothing? And after maybe a bit of time, most people realize, hey, no, it's not worth it. AI at the end of the day should just be a tool. Without some creative human input of how to use it, then AI is just useless. It's without a good input. Like going back to what I was saying about the AI art needing descriptive stuff, without someone there to give a good input and say, hey, this needs to be done, then the AI is not going to do anything. It's not going to go around, for instance,
replacing people.
It is very similar to software use, really. For designers, it's pointless if you don't understand design, if you don't have ideas. You can have the best softwares, most advanced computers, and amazing, Macs and whatever, and nothing is going to come out of it. So, but the merging of the two, this kind of interesting collaboration, is really good. But that doesn't annihilate any other party's role in a way. It's just another tool where you are saying, let's say it's a bit of a saving of a time for more. More basic things that otherwise, you spend more time in ideation and other things that you're doing rather than, just the basic, calculus, whatever you're doing there.
I also think that because of the world changing now, back in the physical world, the new generations and rightly so, upcycling or recycling, etc. And I mean, Amanda, you know all that with your free shop. So I think there'll be other jobs created I love antiques, and you can't find a proper restorer anymore. So I mean, while Christopher's doing robotics, I'd like someone who can turn some wood again. So
yes, of course. Yeah.
Amanda, did you have any ideas for Dina about a specific program that would help handicapped or disabled people?
I would suggest Wabo. It's honestly just a little phone AI app, but that's what I use most of the time. It's very accessible. You can use the free version, so you don't have to pay anything. There is a paid version which allows you to create faster and to create with more, I don't know what you call it, but more styles, I guess, if you pay for it. So I do pay for it because I want that ability.
How do you spell that? I'll type it in the.
It's WOMBO. You can also type Dream in the App Store and it usually pops up. It's just a really simple little app, super easy for almost anybody to use. I mean, my mom could use it and she's not very technologically advanced at all. She tries to stay away from all that stuff, but even she could go on there and type in her prompt, and then if it didn't get the image she wanted, she could go in and edit it and just keep tweaking it until you get what you want. That would be my suggestion.
All right. Thank you very much. Going back to robots. So what was your passion there, Chris?
So I did a robotics engineering master's at Sussex, and in that I just looked at basically lots of different aspects of robotics, so from building robots to programming them, automation, stuff like that. My final year project was building this robotic car that we could simulate autonomous driving on. So that was using machine learning and path planning algorithms to map its way through basically a to scale city, and find out which algorithms work best in which situations, and just basically test autonomous driving on a smaller scale before it gets out everywhere, basically.
Yeah, it's starting to in Switzerland, where there's some cities that are using chauffeurless or driverless buses now. Yeah. I haven't been on one of them, but I haven't tested it yet. But there you go.
That's so cool.
Yeah. The other thing is I was going to, let's see, there's another question, sorry. Oh no, we're back in the same one. Okay, well, we're about 15 minutes away or 10 minutes away from the end. I'm going to ask every one of you to give you your insights about the future and what you would tell people, either collectors or artists or engineers in the AI world, what you would tell them to do next. But I'd like to also remind our audience that we have another webinar coming up on the 5th of April. And it's actually pretty exciting because we've got a huge NFT coming out, which will be a collectible. I can't say anymore because I want to keep the surprise, but it's going to be a fundraiser for the lost children of Ukraine. We already had one of those fundraisers, but we've had someone come up, and you'll discover that later on our social media next week. But we've had someone come up and donate some pretty cool memorabilia. I think it will outdo the first tweet. So I'm hoping and keeping my fingers crossed. So keep watching it. And we'll have the artists involved in that particular fundraiser on the 5th of April. Join us from as far as Bali all the way to California. So it should be exciting. And then I'd like to thank everybody for following. I'd like to remind everybody that it's been streamed on YouTube, and also remind everyone that Taline, and I will write the proper name down, is on our platform and selling some very nice things. Very not nice. I'll take Christopher on that.
Yes.
Some very interesting and mind-boggling art. And then we've got Amanda, of course, who's got some fantastic digital art for the most part on our platform. So, and very excited about that as well. So I'll start with the ladies, if you don't mind, Christopher. So Amanda, what would be your advice for the future for our listeners and young collectors, etc.?
I suppose my advice would be just try to keep up. It's changing quick. Just go with the flow. Try not to get too stressed. Don't judge yourself based off of what other people are doing. Do your own thing. Trust in your own process, and just do art that's meaningful to you. That's I think the most important thing is to just get your message out into the world and use whatever tools are available. The AI is just a tool. It's like a hammer. It can be used for good or it can be used for harm. So use it for good.
Yeah, that's very true. Just to come back on Christopher, what he was saying before, it's now you can actually type on GPT chat 4, how to hack this or that in the dark web, and it will tell you the code. So, I mean, you can use it for bad and you can use it for good. Taline, what's your advice?
In relation to AI, you mean, in that regard, or
just to our young collectors and young artists?
I think it depends what's your purpose. First, find your purpose before you set off and, collect or make any work. Why? Always ask the why. There's always the reason. So how, it doesn't matter. So, you can create land art and you can create things with spaceships. It doesn't, it's only a medium ultimately. So, but first find the purpose, and the purpose needs to be, I think, not just transformative, but very responsible. In fact, being an artist is one of the biggest responsibilities, although artists often are treated like losers, but it's
not
very
me,
sad.
not.
Yeah, but it's this unimportance, or it's extra, it's extremely important. And of course, it's also a very serious responsibility over artists to actually take that responsibility seriously. Mm-hmm. And so again, a system has to be changed, a system has to be built in order to integrate this in a very methodic way into business, into the actual financial models, into the societal models, into workplaces, into that is part of that natural, let's say, transformations of humanity now where we are into the next stage, because otherwise it's like a random act of making and doing things. It's spitting random information out. And this is exactly what Christopher's notes helped me, that in fact it's less random, more calculated. That doesn't mean not spontaneous, but it has to have a reason. The greatest artists in history, from the classics to the most conceptual, they always ask you why. And it's in everything. So as long as you are aware of that, AI for good and AI for mental health, AI for whatever you're doing, and for the sending the right message out, as long as you are aware of that, there's awareness there and responsibility, that everything else, it's free, like Amanda says. It's actually, it's a very encouraging thing for people to be creative. And creativity doesn't only mean art, of course, creatively living, which is the most important thing, in fact. So that's why I always say creative people are not necessarily defined as painters or artists or filmmakers. They are creative thinkers, and that's what matters, So, and I just like to thank also Chris's inputs on this, because, I've been working on this project, Brain Project, and the Science Project, and the upcoming Past Tomorrow's project, which is all to do with artificial intelligence, experience design, coding. But when you actually really make the technical link and the scientific link between cognition, between mathematics, and between all that, it's fascinating that how it kind of falls in place, and then it starts going in the right direction, as opposed to randomness and hunting for information. And it's pretty nice. So
I think what's important as well with Taline and Christopher, you've probably helped, but I mean, it's the focus. I think at the end of the day, you need to have that vision, and where you're going. How you get there is another matter, and how long it takes, but it's where you're going, and that's important.
Absolutely.
We hardly touched on the metaverse, but I think it's important as well to say that this is also happening soon. And somebody told me once, initially when the internet first started, there was Wikipedia basically, and that was it. And now there's, I don't know how many billions of different websites out there. And I think the metaverse, or I was told the metaverse will be the same at one stage. 25 years from now, there will be billions of metaverses, but then there'll be quality will still stand out, vision, Taline's vision and all that will still stand out. And then, as you said, the use, whether it's medical, whether it's fun. And I think we saw that during COVID, you know, when exhibitions were out and there was no more entertainment, people turned to art and the digital, and museums had to reinvent themselves.
Yes.
And again, Taline, to come back to the governments, they realized that as well. So
I hope so.
you know, during pandemic, people started injecting money into what we could do culturally. And I think that sort of was the proof to me that it is necessary, and it's not just you know.
And you know, from Da Vinci, sorry, but from Da Vinci to now, if we really watch the connection and relationship between the science and art, and it's the other side of the actual coin almost. It is unimaginably close and important, the existence of one or the other. It's very strange, but it's
They
like
feed
this.
each other.
Yes. So this is where the more and more it goes, the more natural and kind of it's almost a thing you don't think of anymore. It's spontaneous. So yeah.
So Christopher, when you were doing your science studies or technology studies in Sussex, how often did you go to the museum?
Not often. But I think with this whole AI thing, and what people should do is, AI is a very new field, and obviously it's still developing. And as with anything, when it's new and developing, people are often scared of it. They think, oh, this is going to take my job. Oh, this is going to negatively impact society as a whole. And the truth is, no one knows. And I think in these cases, the most important thing you can do yourself is take a step back, look at the whole picture, and just educate yourself on what's actually happening. Look into how things work. And then as soon as you start understanding something, it's less scary. And you can see that it's not going to ruin the world. Your life's still going to be your life as it was 10 months ago, even though ChatGPT has just come out, kind of thing. Like, as long as you educate yourself and you start understanding what's going on, then suddenly it's less scary.
That sounds good. That's like anything really, and art is the same. If you look at a conceptual exhibition, it doesn't necessarily talk to you, and when you get an explanation for it, it all of a sudden makes sense and it becomes accessible. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks to our audience as well. I will share with you guys the links so you can relook at yourself if you feel so inclined, but share it as much as you can. And again, to all the audience, go out there and start buying NFTs, and preferably on the platform wise.art. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye.